Good morning. My name is David Graden. I'm the Operational Marketing Manager for Michelin Agriculture for U.S. and Canada. Thank you for taking time with us this morning. The purpose of this webinar is we want to discuss some of the tips and tricks regarding tires, why tires are important, especially leading into the spring planting season here. Many folks think about tires very little. They buy a $250,000, $500,000 machine, but think very little about the tires that are under it. But let's think for a second. You bought that $500,000 machine or that $250,000 machine for what? For the horsepower, for the buttons, the bells, whistles, things like that. Think for a second. Tires are what actually transfer the torque of that machine. Tires are actually what pull the implements that do the work in your fields. And so let's take that in consideration. All right. So put that as your frame of mind, and let's talk a little bit about what you need to look for when you first pull your machine out after winter storage. First, let's air up our tires. When you put the machine into storage, you probably aired them up to begin with, or if you didn't, they're going to be severely deflated from the ambient temperature changes throughout the cold months and losing air pressure naturally throughout the cold months. And so, to what air pressure? Well, if you'd like, you could have a Michelin rep come out, weigh your machinery, because you need to know what the application is. What are you going to do with that machine first thing in the spring? Are you going to get right into tillage or move right into planting? That's going to dictate the load on the rear axle and the weight transfer from your front axle and dictate what the air pressure needs to be. Next, let's take a physical look at the tires and the wheel assembly. We want to look out for fluid leaks. Not many folks understand that with fluid leaks, hydraulic leaks or fuel leaks will actually deteriorate rubber. So as that rubber sits there, if you had a hydraulic leak onto that rubber, it will eat away the rubber and cause that rubber to perform differently as you roll down the road or through the field. Next, let's look at wheel damage. You'd like to check your wheels for excessive or possible impacts. That will significantly affect your tire performance and may potentially even cause catastrophic situations down the road. And then take a look for blisters in the sidewall. Oftentimes, blisters can be caused by impact damage. Maybe you hit a culvert in a ditch while you're mowing in the wintertime. Or while you're mowing in the fall, and you didn't catch that. That blister will swell and again can potentially cause very hazardous situation. Slashes or cuts or lug cracking. Lug cracking is a sign of possible overloading or over torque due to under pressure. Many different situations can cause lug cracking. Slashes and cuts, of course. Consider deer antlers, consider rocks and damages that could be caused in the field while working before you place that machine in storage. Sidewall cracking. Take a look out for sidewall cracking. That can also be a cause of overloading or under pressure situation. And then lastly, you look for weather damage. So weather damage is indicative of age mostly, but can be brought on early depending on the storage practices of your machines. If you store your machines outside, you're going to see rubber crack earlier than you would if you stored it in a cool, dry place. And a lot of that has to do with how tires are manufactured today versus how tires used to be manufactured, let's say, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, most manufacturers in the world use what we call aromatic oils. And aromatic oils at that time caused tires to continue to harden over time, or cure, as many folks would say. It used to be dealers would purchase ag tires 2 to 3 years in advance and then let them sit on their back lots before they sold them 2 to 3 years later because they allowed them to cure longer and allowed the tires to harden over that time. Well, we no longer do that. Rubber in general has a shelf life. And so you need to understand a little bit about that shelf life. Typically, tires can last anywhere from 10 to 14 years, despite what brand or size the tire is. And so that all being said, it's very important that you understand the age of your tires. And so how old are your tires? Well, look for the date code on your sidewall. If you begin to see weather cracking and the date code on that sidewall is 2118, I'd contact the manufacturer because there's a problem there. If that tire is 7, 8, 9 years old, you're beginning to see some weather checking. That's probably normal. If the tire is losing air and it's only 7 or 8 years old, then again, I would reach out to your manufacturer's rep or your tire dealer, your ag tire dealer, to make sure that there's not something bigger that you need to look at. Let's look at tread depth. If you don't already have one, I'd recommend investing in a tread depth gauge. They're not very expensive, but they'll help to identify early situations, whether it be an alignment problem. Most of the time, if tires begin to wear on one side or the other, despite whether they're passenger car, light truck, semi-truck, or ag tires, the wear is typically the same. Unfortunately, when that wear begins, after that wear begins and becomes very noticeable, the wear pattern's already in the tire and you're not going to change it. And so tires are made uniformly, very round, uniformly side to side. There's no difference in the rubber compounds. Therefore, if you begin to see a situation where your rubber lugs begin to wear more on one side than the other, it is 99.9% most likely that it's a mechanical problem. And so reach out to your local tire representative to see if you can identify that problem. Also, ensure your loads are properly balanced. That's something that Michelin can help with. We have a tool that we've developed. We call it our Optimum Tire Performance Worksheet. That will efficiently balance your load from front to rear, side to side. If your tires if the air pressures are set properly, they're based upon the axle loads and the torque. And so you need to be properly balanced in order to transfer the proper amount of torque per axle between the gear ratios as well. So that's something to look at, and also something that you can identify using a tread depth gauge when you pull your machines out. You can also request a farm visit to get the most out of your tires. Reach out, find your local Michelin dealer or Michelin rep. You can find this at www.hardworkingtires.com through the dealer locator, or you can contact us and I can reach out to you and let you know who your local rep is. Please let us know where you're located. So next, let's take a look into minimizing soil compaction. So again, we just talked about running the right air pressure. This impacts your total tire performance, your machine performance, and so check and maintain your pressures regularly. I would say that a good common practice would be to check your tire pressures on a monthly basis. You're going to lose about 1 psi per month in general. Your tire pressure will also change with ambient temperature changes. For every 10 degrees ambient temperature change, you will lose or gain about 1 psi. Now, when you set your tires at 6 psi to begin with, 1 psi is a lot. So that's something to take into consideration. The other thing, to reduce soil compaction, use tires with an overall larger footprint. Upgrade to IF or VF tires. You may or may not be aware that here in 2019 we had a change in load inflation standards. Michelin led this change, so now the new standardization is IF and VF tires have a load inflation table that runs down to field operation pressures and speeds, and that's down to about 6 psi. Before that change, the load inflation recommendation was set at 40 miles per hour. Now it's down to 6 miles per hour and on up. And so that's kind of a big deal. So you'll see some changes there. Another thing, minimize your trips over the field. Think about using controlled lanes. In Europe, this is a common practice because the fields are small. Farms are much smaller than they are here in North America. But there's been a lot of study into this, and it works. So if now they still plant over those lanes, but the yield is significantly less. If you're using an IF or VF tire, you have a lower impact to the ground, and therefore damage the roots or the arable soil less, and so you can grow more yield. In fact, University of Illinois recently conducted a test within the last few years using Michelin VF tires at field recommended speeds. And what they found, let's say corn, for example, was a 4.3% increase in yield. Now, to most folks, that doesn't sound like a lot, but let's take that into consideration of farm size and yield. Let's add in fuel, perhaps. So over a couple thousand acres, given an average yield, that's an additional, roughly $26,000 added to the bottom line. So that's significant. That's only 2,000 acres. And then add another 10% for fuel. So fuel consumption is 10% less because you have an optimized footprint, torque transfer, reduced soil compaction, plus $20 plus $1,000 added to the bottom line. It's a really big deal. So take that in consideration. Also, use cast iron ballast versus liquid ballast. When you use liquid ballast, I know in the South it's a very common practice, but using liquid ballast completely erodes the benefits of purchasing a radial tire to begin with. Air pressure, the air chamber is what carries the load of a machine, and so when you take that air chamber out and you fill it with liquid, whether it be beet juice, water, whatever it may be, you're reducing the ability for that tire to flex. And so therefore, you might as well have a bias ply tire on your machine. While filling tires with liquid ballast, you're increasing your ground pressure, minimizing your footprint, and overall affecting your yield because of it, and your traction. So consider that. Don't ignore your implements. Implement tires are the same. They react the same. Right now, most implement tires are bias ply tires, so consider that. Also take into consideration, in most fields today in North America, rubber touches about 90% of that field. Now, many folks may sit and think, now come on, that's ridiculous. But let's think about that. All right, so you start off with your tillage, right? You go north to south. Then you move on to planting, and you may plant at an angle, and then you do a different angle for spraying, and you may spray how many times? 1-2 times a year, and then you come through and harvest, and then tillage again. Rubber will touch up to 90% of your field, and so your tires will have a major impact on your yield because of that. So take into consideration maybe a central tire inflation system. In fact, Michelin Agriculture recently purchased PTG. It's a German central tire inflation system, and we've begun launching that in North America here in the past couple years because farmers really don't have a lot of time to stop between fields, air up their tires for road, run down the road, and then turn around and air down their tires. So central tire inflation system allows the operator to, with the press of a button, to reduce or increase that air pressure based upon the application. So it's a simple, low-cost way to maximize total efficiency, to minimize damage, and improve yield, and overall add dollars to the bottom line. Finally, to mention on CTIS is it's transferable between machines. So take that in consideration as well. That's all I have for you right now. Do we have any questions? So we have a common question here. Is Michelin going to make low sidewall tires like Goodyear? Well, I want to speak for myself personally. Not necessarily ready to rope Michelin corporate into this, but here's my personal opinion on that. LSWs have been out for several years now. Currently, Michelin, nor Firestone, or BKT, or Alliance, no one has decided to follow this type of manufacturing or this type of technology. And the reason is we don't believe that it works at this time. We're all still looking into it, trying to determine where the benefits truly are with LSWs, but we're unable to prove any of the claims. We're unable to prove that we see lower soil compaction. In fact, one of the challenges that we face is when a producer purchases LSW tires, the tire and the rim specifically match. So if the tire fails, or if there's an issue with the tire or the rim, it's actually more cost effective to buy the whole package again. And then there's a lead time. Most dealers don't stock these tires by themselves. They're stocked as a package. And so that can be costly. Secondly, let's think about the footprint. The footprint of a tire. You can always go very wide on tires, but you can't get more lugs on the ground with an LSW tire. In fact, if you used an IF or a VF tire specifically in place of an LSW, what you'll find is not only a wide footprint, but a long footprint, which is necessary for flotation. And so from a flotation standpoint, we still truly believe that large singles in a VF technology or duals in a VF technology is still the best way to go. Here's another common question. How do Michelin tires stand up against stubble? So I spent several years, 6+ years in the field as a sales rep in the Midwest. At one point in time, covered everything from west of the Mississippi River. And one of the most common issues that I would run into is stubble damage. What I found surprised me was most producers didn't realize that that stubble is something that could be handled with a tire. Producers would buy extra equipment to reduce stubble damage on their tires, whether it be rollers, stubble stompers. If you go down to Missouri and Kansas and further south, you see a lot of folks that are burning the tips of their stubble. Well, what I found was we had to educate producers that stubble is first. It's not just a cost of doing business. It is a problem. But more importantly for me is Michelin actually makes a product that combats against stubble. We make rubber compounds in our yield bib tires, our spray bib tires, several other tread designs that have a stubble shield rubber compound that will significantly reduce the effects of stubble on those tires. To take it a step further, even our most standard of standard tires, the AgriBib 2, actually stands up quite well in stubble. And we know this because we have tested and we have compared in accelerated stubble testing where we've asked farmers, we've given them tires, we've asked them to specifically try their best to destroy our tires and our competitor tires to see how they stood up against each other. What we found is the Michelin AgriBib 2 tires actually stood up 50% better than any of our competitor tires in the accelerated stubble test. That's significant. So take into consideration, stubble is not a cost of doing business. There are products out there that don't necessarily cost you thousands more to implement. So here's another question. Do Michelin tires have warranties or anything to back up their tires? Well, yes, they do. In fact, some have analyzed our warranty versus our competitors' warranties. And what was found is that the Michelin warranty is actually more robust than any other tire manufacturer warranty regarding ag tires. And so that's number one. Number two, Michelin offers a standard 90-day guarantee on all standard Michelin agriculture and Clay Bear radial agricultural tires. To take it a step further, we offered a total 1-year satisfaction guarantee on tires with UltraFlex Technologies and Stubble Guard. So think about that. So we use that as a sales tool right now. You can buy a set of Michelin Agriculture tires and you can run them for planting season or harvest season, or run them for both seasons. Try the tires out. If you don't like them, reach out to your authorized Michelin agricultural dealer or your local Michelin rep. We'll come out, we'll take a look, make sure that the air pressures are set, make sure that you're happy with the tires before we leave. And if not, we will buy the tires back. The dealer, your Michelin authorized dealer, will buy those tires back, and you can get back into whatever it is you want to get back into. In my experience, I have yet to have anyone take advantage of the warranties, but they're there. So if you decide you wanted to try Michelin with very little cost or exposure, this is one way to do it. Let's think about what is an IF or a VF tire. Some may not have heard this yet, but it's a standardization that Michelin launched in the early 2000s. It's a standard technology now across most of your larger ag tire manufacturers. What IF and VF stands for is IF is increased flexion, VF is very increased flexion. IF can carry 20% more load than a standard tire at the same air pressures, or 20% less air pressure to carry the same load. The VF tire is set up very similar, except it's 40% more load at the same air pressure, or 40% less air pressure at the same load as a standard tire. So let's talk about radial versus bias tires. Very simple answer. Radial is a technology that allows tires to flex. It increases your footprint by running lower air pressures than bias ply tires. And the big deal with that is you've got larger footprint, less soil compaction, more tractive capabilities, and overall better performance in a radial tire versus a bias ply tire. So this question really plays a little bit more in relation to the Goodyear LSW tires. Goodyear LSW tires were created specifically to reduce power hop and road loping. Well, it's easy to reduce that or completely eradicate that when you don't have much of an air chamber or a sidewall to flex. In order to reduce power hop with Michelin tires, we first recommend optimize your weight distribution. Well, really, you should do that to begin with because air pressures need to be able to set up to carry the loads, and your overall rolling circumference of your front and your rear tires need to match the gear ratio of the machine. If all of this is put together properly, you should have zero power hop and you should have zero road loping. In addition, you will gain the comfort in the ride that you typically won't gain with an LSW on the road. You'll also gain the maximum tractive capacity and the overall efficiency, lower fuel consumption, lower soil damage, and increased yield that adds to the bottom line. All right, if no one else has any other questions, we'll let you get back to your day. Again, thank you so very much for taking the time with us this morning. If you have any further questions or comments or criticisms, please feel free to reach out to us through www.hardworkingtires.com. Thank you very much.